Hello and welcome to a special live edition of Breaking the Grade. I'm Rose Hustreiter, guest hosting for Josh Chernikoff today, my fellow education changemaker, rock the boater, who's about to go live from DC Startup and Tech Week 2025. First off, it's a genuine privilege to be in the host seat instead of the hot seat, as one might say. So thank you, Josh, and your team for inviting me to share a couple of thoughts. Before we put Josh in the hot seat, as he takes the stage here in Washington, D.C., his hometown, I'm actually joining you a few hours north from the Bay of Fundy in southwest New Brunswick, Canada. So hello to my fellow Canadian entrepreneurs. Let me know on the chat window if you are Canadian, come on and go Canucks go. I'm from Vancouver, still chasing that Stanley Cup dream. So a little bit of hope here. But when it comes to hope, that's not a way to run a business, is it? See, that's why if you're joining us for the first time, or this is the first time you've ever heard from Josh, I think you're in for something very powerful. Josh brings a lot of lived experience in the trenches of the education business. He's also a former educator, a founder, and the official host of this show, although I did steal it today. So, Josh, thanks again for having me here, because I know that you are about to speak about something we very much care deeply about as education founders, educators, ed tech, and innovators. It's about building impactful, credible, and revenue-driving education businesses. Now, what does that actually mean, right? Those are pretty big words: impactful, credible. Well, revenue-driving, okay, that's a little bit of money there. But what does that actually mean in our day-to-day as entrepreneurs? How do we figure out those ways to remain scalable and sustainable? If you've ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, you've probably heard that focusing on building effective systems is more important than focusing on goals for achieving long-term success. Now, why is that? Well, it's because systems, if they're built well, create sustainable, automatic habits and energy that leads to continuous improvement and remarkable results. Now, well-designed systems can help us generate momentum, even when us ed entrepreneurs are sleeping. So Josh is going to share a couple key aspects of a system he's taught me and hundreds of my colleagues in the sector. So I want us to get ready to kind of maximize what you hear. So stretch out those fingers, get those chat fingers ready. If you're live with us here, please send me a note and let me know you're here. And I want to get into a couple of primers to really maximize the time you're going to have with Josh. Because again, when it comes to hope, I mean, if I'm hoping for my Canucks to get that cup, well, that's one thing. But when it comes to hoping that our businesses are going to stay sustainable, what are we hoping for? Good luck. Maybe our people will continue to refer us and refer us and refer us again. That word of mouth about our businesses will tell the story that'll generate our next month's revenue. Hope is not a plan, right? Now, again, there are times to hope. But in this case, when it comes to our businesses and the people we serve, hope for our businesses and projects, I think, is a little bit giving away our power. So in my capacity today as a project leader and facilitator, we're going to warm up our minds. We're going to do a little bit of prep so that when Josh hits the stage in just a few minutes, you can really maximize the value that he's going to bring to you today. So I'm going to start with a little personal story. Many moons ago, about 25 odd years ago, I was asked to teach my first professional skills development workshop. Now, by that point, I had been a junior consultant for IT projects, and I really didn't know what to do as an educator. They gave us books. They closed the door. I looked around the room, and there were people from all walks of life. And I only knew one question to ask from my consulting background. I just asked, why are you here? And how can I be of service to you today in this workshop? Little did I know that that one question was going to turn into a successful professional and workforce skills development company, 1,400 live events later, and a high-performing L&D professional skills company and an ed tech company. So you might be going, well, why does this matter? Because I want to go to you now. I want you to take a moment before Josh comes on stage, and I want you to think back to the very first time that you had an aha moment for your education company or your education project or your ed tech idea. Any project that you have said yes to taking on, think about your why. What was your deep why? And who did you want to help? How did you want to help them? See, in the work that I do every day as an entrepreneur, I help organizations, teams, and professionals build the skills, the behaviors, and systems that turn ideas into long-term results and impacts. So I want you to keep asking why. What's your deep why? For me, and I felt for a lot of my ed entrepreneurs, I love empowering people to unlock their courage, their creativity, and build durable skills for the future of their work. So it comes right down to impact. But there's something about making that impact. There's a little bit of work that has to go into it. And again, comes back to systems. So Josh is going to help us today think about some honest systems that we can employ in our own everyday lives as entrepreneurs to help us make that impact that we want. To get ready for this, we're going to have, I think he's coming on in about 8 minutes. So we're just going to do a couple little things. Let's start with that beginner's mindset, right? When I joined Josh's 3E community, I was one of the first cohorts. I was like, yeah, but I've been in this business for a long time. But what I learned as a business person is that always helps me to look for that 1% improvement. Where could I be doing better? So to do that, let's do a quick review of your business or your project right now. I want you to start with a beginner's mindset. Let's just pretend we know nothing, all right? And the world is changing pretty quick, so sometimes it can feel like we don't know a lot. So let's just clear our minds for a second. And we're going to come into this. Let's see what one thing we can take away. And now let's do a review of your business by starting with what is working with your business, because we don't want to throw that away. All right. So think about the tools, the technology, the behaviors, your everyday routines. I want you to look at what is actually working for you in your education business. Now, let's get a little more honest and let's think about what could be working better, even just a little better. For many of the founders I talked to today, it's about sustainable lead generation. So just check in on that piece. Is it causing you stress? Are you ambiguous about it? How are you approaching the lead gen in your business? And this is why I said yes to being guest host today on Josh's show. A, I get to meet more of you. But B, when Josh talks about moving from referrals to a repeatable engine, I've lived that and I still live that. It's an iterative evolution of business. As the world changes, we adapt. And when we have a mindset of adaptation, then we can adopt systems that actually let us get that momentum where we can spend our valuable energy on. So I want you to think, if something's not working or what could be working better in your projects, if you're like, hey, I'm getting tired and fatigued all the time, let me know that in the chat. If you're like, I start the top of the day and I got 400 things to do and I get nothing done at the end, then I'm going to say, hey, what are your top 2 results you want out of your days every day, right? So think about what could be working better and then bring that into Josh's talk today. Because I have a sense, especially given a lot of the changes that have been happening in just the last 2 years in this sector, that you're going to take away a few things. And then the next question I have for you is defining success. I believe success has a lot to do with how we define it and how we engineer it. So I want you to look at the next 6 months for you, your team, and your people, and your audiences that you serve. All right. What does success look like for you? What result do you want out of the next 6 months? Again, let's focus on that lead gen side, because this shift from accidental innovation to actual intentional growth with measurable results, that's what Josh is teaching us, especially with his 3E method. So definitely take a look at your own success metrics. Now, what is happening today? We have about T-minus 5 minutes. Okay, so Josh is speaking live at one of the biggest gatherings for entrepreneurs in this region, at DC Startup Week and Tech Week 2025. Now, this talk is going to matter to all of us in education sector, those of us who run our companies, whether you're a consultant or a founder or a mission-driven nonprofit. When we hit that wall of scalability, how do we reduce those barriers, right? Especially in this day and age where we live in that attention economy. So when we depend only on selling through our personal relationships, referrals, or word of mouth, is that actually sustainable? So this is the wall that Josh is going to help you grow past today. The session he's about to get us into, 4 minutes left to go, is called What to do when word of mouth is not enough. Okay, you're going to learn how to turn your credibility and your stories into a system that drives sales. I want you to discover the 3 E's of growth: evaluate, elevate, and engine. Now, again, the last question I have for you before we have him on stage here is, what part of your business still depends on hope or hustle or luck instead of a system, right? Hope is not a plan or a strategy or a tactic. Hope in this context takes away your personal power as a leader of your project. So I'm just saying you're leaving a lot on the table. So let me do a couple takeaways before he comes on. Every morning, I want you to look at your entire list of to-dos. And instead of a to-do list, I want you to start creating results lists and choose your top 2 results every single day. Okay, that's going to start shifting you away from reaction to intention. And if you're thinking, I don't have a system yet when it comes to lead gen, that's a good thing. That means you're going to save a lot of stress and time by modeling systems that are actually proven. And again, Josh is here to bring some of that to you. And you don't have to build the full machine today. You just need to define what good looks like for you and why you're doing it. So, what are you defining and measuring as success? What would happen if your story was as powerful as your solution? Just have that ready to go. And when you listen to Josh today, imagine that you would have to teach the session, all right? That way, when you take notes, you will actually be able to retain a little bit more and ask me questions. Come on the chat window if you're here on LinkedIn Live. We're going to be going live and unfiltered from DC Startup Week. I'm just checking in with the team. And he's going to be presenting from Amazon HQ2. And when he's done, he's do about 30-minute talk, then we're going to come back here and I'll host a Q&A session or just a couple takeaways before we close out today's Breaking the Grade. And again, thank you to Josh's team. We're international here, so way to go, everybody. And how are you all doing in Washington? Okay, looks like they are getting ready to have us, so I will keep us here until we are live in Washington. Also, for those of you who want to connect with me further, you can find me at rosehustwriter.com or go to LinkedIn and type my name in and stay connected. And I want to hopefully share a few more practical strategies for your everyday life as an entrepreneur. And let's see how we're doing. But one more minute. And if you're waiting here, let's keep that mindset on what do you want to improve in your business? Why? Just think about what part of your business still depends on that hope. Okay. So think through that. Let's stay honest with that process. And while we're waiting for Josh here, looks like I may have like 1 more minute to talk about this. But, when you think about the stories and that aha moment I challenged you on, I want you to think about that deep why. Go right back to the beginning. Like, where did you start this business? Because when you bring that why into your everyday, keep your why close by. And we are bringing Josh in about 1 minute. Excellent. Good. So when you keep that why close by, you are able to actually basically get those systems in place and scale. And here we have Josh. We are going to, let's see, here we go. Without further ado, I think we are going to go live. Yes, please welcome Josh Chernikoff on stage, live from DC Startup and Tech Week in Washington, DC.
I didn't know if you guys overlapped at all. So, I was part of the Redskins Broadcast Network, so I was like media, but not. And then people like JP, and you might not have a master's in broadcast journalism, so the JPs of the world looked at me as kind of.
I'm just going to check to make sure we got our feed going through.
I'll blame him for it. So we didn't spend too much time, but I worked a lot with Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's back, right?
Yeah, he's the voice.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy.
This is live. Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, hey, Alvin, just checking in, just making sure you let me know when we're ready to go there. All right. Hey, Josh.
At 1 o'clock.
Hey.
You guys can hear loud and clear?
Can hear you
Like
loud
I said,
and clear.
I was explaining my background in broadcast journalism, where I was in Harrisonburg, Virginia, beautiful Shenandoah Valley, where I went live. Going live meant running a long cord to the front and to the parking lot. And so my team, I said, why don't we try and broadcast this thing live? And so we have a producer in Nigeria, we have a host in Canada, and we're here, and then we're going and broadcasting across 4 channels. So I think that we can basically get going if everybody's ready. Do you guys want me to use a microphone, or can everybody hear loud?
What microphone?
You want microphones?
Yes.
We'll do microphone. That's cool. All right, so we'll get started. I just need to see from Rose that we're good, Okay, cool. So more about me. I could get lost in the paper bag. So I'm glad everybody made it here. And we'll let people stream in here. So you are in the right place, the masterclass for building your predictable opportunity pipeline. We're going to talk about my journey from DC all the way to Shenandoah Valley, all the way to Mexico, and then back here. I've been back in DC since June 25th. It was an interesting re-entry from having lived 4 years in a very small town in Mexico. So for everybody here, how many of you guys own your own business or might have a day job, but you are also running your own business? So you're kind of doing 2 things. Just want to get an idea of, okay, cool, very good. All right, that'll help you. So this is me, Josh Chirikoff, born and raised in Washington, D.C. And when I mean born, I mean DC, the Washington Hospital Center. Yes, I grew up in Bethesda, but I've been back in DC since 1997. I went to American University. So I've been back in DC for a very long time. We have a house in Capitol Hill. Like I said, the last 4 years we've spent living in Mexico. I'll get to this, but I have started, scaled, and sold 2 companies in the DC area in the education space. No, I'm not an educator, and I was a pretty bad student, in fact. But when you spend 5 years with Washington Redskins, you'll do anything to cleanse your soul. And so I started doing some tutoring. I had a lot of tutors going on.
Be careful.
No, I love the team.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong. It is my life. And after last weekend, my head is thick. But no, I would never say anything bad about the Redskins, ever. These are some of my clients that I've worked with, some of them in DC and some of them out. My Al is from DC, Rocket PD is from DC, and then we've got companies we work with. You're going to see a lot of these companies that I work with are in the education space. And when you guys look me up on LinkedIn, and you should find me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I talk a lot about the education space. However, what I know and what I teach certainly is relevant to other businesses. But I believe in the power of one. And we'll talk more about that. And from the power of one means that I'm going to focus on education companies. But what I've also found is that I can answer the questions that you guys might have regarding your businesses and managing. So my story, as I said, grew up in Washington, D.C. It's my family, my mom, my sisters, my dad, and had a pretty typical upbringing. 2 older sisters who were super smart. One went to Harvard, one went to Amherst. I wasn't not smart. I just didn't really care about school. I didn't really enjoy it. And so I had a lot of tutors growing up. So that's going to be a big factor into what we talk about today. Again, this is my favorite view of DC. It doesn't look like this anymore, obviously, because RFK looks very different now. But that's my favorite view. Born and raised here, love being back here. We're now living on Connecticut Avenue in Northwest, which is a whole new part of the world because we've been in Capitol Hill for the last 10 years. For me, again, school wasn't easy. I think I probably heard this quote from Billy Joel a little bit too early in life. And why get straight A's? It never appealed to me. And the tutors that I worked with were very good to me. They lifted me up and they made school interesting. And when I got the tutors that I needed, school became easy. Not sitting in the classroom, that was never easy. But when the tutors came to our house, when I got to go to a tutoring center, life became much easier for me. I went to American University and then went from AU, which was a phenomenal school. Had fun. Didn't learn too much there, but had a great time, made the best friends anybody could have ever asked for. And I went on and got my master's in broadcast journalism at Northwestern. And then I basically went from Chicago newsroom to Harrisonburg. That's a big jump. But I spent a couple years in Harrisonburg, Virginia at WHSV TV doing sports broadcasting. It was an amazing 2 years. And then the Redskins came calling. And that was absolutely my dream job. With my dream team. I have nothing bad to say about the Redskins. But it was a really tough place to work. Obviously, if you're a Redskins fan, you saw the losing on the field. You didn't see the losing that was going on in Ashburn, a Redskins park. But I was grateful to get to work there. And I was grateful to get the heck out of there. And what my goal was to try and cleanse my soul. So I started doing a little bit of tutoring. Again, I had no method. I didn't have a background in education. I just had a lot of tutors growing up, and they were super helpful. So in January 2008, I left the Redskins after starting my tutoring company about 2 months earlier. Unhooked, goodbye, I'm out of here. Started this tutoring company in 2008. And then you guys can relate to this. In May of 2008, we were featured on NBC4. Because I got some journalism skills. I got some friends in journalism. So I got us on NBC4. And if you guys are from here, you know that when Jim Vance and Dorian Gensler say something good about your company, you are set. And we were set. And so I rode that. The tutoring company, we were a boutique tutoring company in the Washington, D.C. area, which meant that we went from home to home. This was before online tutoring, 2008. We needed the pandemic to come through for online tutoring to make sense to people at that point. In fact, Sylvan Learning Center, which was in Baltimore, headquartered in Baltimore, came knocking and said, we'll give you this online tutoring thing, use it with your clients. I said, great, I'll take over the world. This is easy. But none of our clients wanted it. So I stuck to what I knew. One-to-one in-home tutoring. Business grew. That's what I always did. Leads on repeat. No problem. The operations were a mess. That I did. That was not my thing. But I always thought we have to have leads. That's why you guys are here, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I got bored. I got bored with the tutoring company. So I started a second company. I do not recommend you guys start 2 companies while you're just getting that first one going. But it happens. Many of us are entrepreneurs in this room, and we get bored. So I started an after-school enrichment company. And what that meant was we reached out to schools, specifically in the Washington, D.C. area, that had large enrichment programs. So from 3 to 4, these schools would have pottery, art, yoga, a number of different activities. And they were run by the PTAs. So generally it was the top 1% of moms at the school who were running these PTAs and running these programs. And I had a parent come to me and she said, would you run a homework club? I said, yes, of course. I don't know what that means, but let's do it. And we ran an amazing homework club. It was good for me, it was good for them. We had parents that signed up for tutoring packages, that's great. And they had kids that were getting after school tutoring. But the actual programs were a mess. And so I said to this mom, why are you doing all this? She said, well, this is how after school enrichment works. Meaning that if they wanted to bring programs in, like my tutoring program, or a pottery program, or a yoga program, that the mom really had to run. I said, that's ridiculous. Let me do it. She said, here you go. It's all yours. And And so I had business number 2, that's Flex Academy. That's our daughter, Camila. She's now 10 and a half. She's basically been with us every step of the way. So is my wife, Tina, who early on would help me with rosters and things like that. But she has a full-time job at Deloitte and decided I'm going to focus on Deloitte. Very good. Then I brought in Mandy on the left and Michael on the right, my operations people. I'm here to tell you guys, you gotta be good at one of these things. The lead gen, the CRO, the sales, or the operations. And then do your best to find your Michael or your Mandy. Because you can't do it all. You really can't. You feel like you can. And maybe you wanna try it, because you gotta have a good idea about what Mandy on the left with my tutoring company, and Michael on the right, my aftercare company. He happens to also own 55 Subways. That's why there's a big sub in back of him. But you have to have these people in your life. But then I sold both of these companies. So I sold the tutoring company to a Canadian company that took over. They wanted to take over these smaller tutoring companies in major metropolitan areas. Great. I got Flex Academies through the pandemic. That was not easy. But I got Flex through the pandemic and I sold that. That was about 5 years ago. And that's when we moved to Mexico. And I started spending more time in a little town called San Miguel de Allende, which is on the left. If you guys have ever watched the movie Coco, that is basically where we live. It is a dusty, small, amazing place. I went down there to try and start this third business. What I thought I would do is work with companies in education to help them generate leads. So I sat down with some of these business owners that I knew very well. They seemingly were running very solid businesses. And I said to them, let's get you more of the leads that are working very well. What do you mean? No, let's get you the schools that you want. Let's get you the parents that you want. And he said, we'll take anything. Tell me more. Any school, any parent. I just want contracts. I just want people. I just need revenue. So that's not the way to grow your business. And he said, we don't care. And this pattern kept repeating itself. And so, okay, my third business isn't gonna work the way I thought it was. So we're gonna have to pivot a little bit. And so from Mexico, I started talking to more businesses, specifically in the education space, but I don't think that this is only in the education space. And I talked to people like Sean on the left and Kyle on the right. They're really running wonderful businesses. But they were getting a contract here and a contract there, and then they get nothing, and then they get 5 more contracts, and then nothing. And I don't know if that resonates with you guys, but that's, I think, what happens in a lot of industries until you get those leads on repeat. So I started the Ed Sales Elevation Experience. Took a step back, brought somebody on my team on, his name is Ken, and we wrote the Ed Sales Elevation Experience. And today, we've worked with 168 clients in just about 2 years. Successfully. I measure success for my clients by them being able to generate leads on repeat. Because most of you guys, I would imagine, because you're here, aren't necessarily interested in doing all the selling that it takes to get these leads on repeat. My goal today and with all my clients is to teach you how to fish. So you can start getting those leads on repeat so that you can probably focus on the part of the business that you actually really enjoy. This is John Gamba. John actually, from Philadelphia, went to Georgetown Prep. I worked with him at Penn's Graduate School of Education. Aside from having some of the greatest hair you can have on, he's a phenomenal guy. And I'm really proud of the work that we have done through Penn and through the Ed Sales Elevation Experience to do exactly what we're going to start today here, which is teaching people how to get your own leads on repeat. Start to feel that confidence and that clarity in your own business. The number one mistake that I see people make is that you try and sell to everybody. You cannot sell to everybody. And probably in no other industry does this rear its ugly head more so than in the education space. Because if you're selling to K-12, for example, you've got principals, superintendents, parents, teachers, and by the way, the kids are the ones that are using what you're doing. So you have multiple stakeholders, so you think, I gotta sell to everybody. So when I started Flex Academies, I had no experience selling to schools. I had sold to parents, but B2C is very different than B2B. And let's think of schools as B2B. My background, like I said, was in journalism, so I really knew how to ask questions. So I started asking these schools what they wanted in an after-school enrichment program. And I heard the same thing over and over again. We want a big program. Bless them, sorry. We want a big program. I know I can bring you a big program. I can do that. But I was hearing the wrong things. None of the schools that I was working with or wanted to work with or had brought me in, none of them had after-school enrichment programs. So guess what? I would like to have, not a need to have. So I want you guys to imagine this for a minute. Imagine that you wash windows for a living. Okay? You put food on your table because you wash windows. And I want you to imagine that we're in downtown DC and you got a building on the left that has dirty windows and you have a building on the right that has clean windows. In my opinion, in my experience, you should want to work in the building that has clean windows. Because that person who runs that building values what you do. They love the smell of a clean window. They love looking through that clean window. They love knowing that those windows are being cleaned every other week. And so I had to make a very significant pivot in my second business to not work with schools who didn't have programs. The schools that didn't have any enrichment programs, they didn't have any problems. I couldn't solve their problems. They didn't have any. But the schools with large enrichment programs, they had big problems. They were losing money. They had liability issues. They had vendors that weren't showing up. They had parents that were pissed off. The list goes on. And I just figured out how to solve all those problems. So I want you to think about that when you're thinking about who your perfect client is. Because you can't serve everybody. Who's your perfect client? You are the window washer. You want to look for, in my opinion, the clean windows. And because the kids were getting this from outside, nobody was signing up. They were signing contracts. PTAs were happy to sign a contract. They were happy to bring us in. But the kids weren't showing up. So I had no business. So I had to think about one ideal client, and today I think about that as the power of one. So I want you to think in your terms, the power of one. Who's the one client that I can transform their life? For me, it was the PTA presidents. Because I knew all the issues they were facing. Granted, there were other stakeholders. There was the principal, there were the providers, and there were the parents. But when I armed those badass moms with the way that we were going to make their lives easier, they went to the principal, to the providers, and to the parents and said, we're going to work with this guy. And that's what happened. So the business began to grow. And once I started getting in front of these clients, the yeses started coming. And the yeses are helpful for revenue. The yeses are also helpful for your own confidence, for your own clarity, for your own messaging. Because when the messaging is clear and you're speaking directly to somebody and they know that you can help them, that's what they're looking for. And it doesn't feel like selling. And again, I'm going to make a generalization here, is that most of you guys probably aren't interested in doing hardcore, pushy sales. Neither am I. That's not who I am, and that's not what I teach. Brent, who's from Virginia but happens to be a Dallas Cowboys fan. Great dude. Came into our program, one of the first people to take a chance on me was Mayal. And his program helps parents and school systems deal with the after-school challenges that occur when you've got multiple apps that kids have to use. And Brent came in and he wasn't sure who he was selling to, public schools, private schools, charter schools, any school, home school, I don't care. I said, Brent, we gotta settle on one. And so we did. We settled on one. We started just talking to private schools. As Amy Porterfield says, you guys should give her a follow. She's great. Just own your corner of the internet. Own your corner of the world. So Brent started owning his corner of the world, which was private schools. So I want you guys to ask yourselves some of these questions. Do they have this problem? In my case, again, the PTAs that I wanted initially had no problem. Is it painful? Is it painful enough that people will pay you? Are they willing to pay? What is their desire, and who is that one person I can talk to? I like to think of the perfect client as a frictionless relationship. That your client, your perfect client, should want to work with you as much as you want to work with them. It's an amazing place to come from. That's not selling. Mistake number 2 is focusing on these slow burn methods. And I'm going to talk to you about the slow burn methods, but I bet you guys have been experiencing them. Conferences happen to be one of them. But I'll show you how conferences can actually be very successful for you. So when I speak to founders about getting leads, quite often they give me this very confusing look. What exactly are leads and how do we get them? The CEOs that I get to talk to fall into these 3 buckets. Great idea, no sales. But the idea is coming along. Network is tapped out. You've got your John Gamba in your life and you're asking for leads and leads and leads. But eventually you can't continue to ask people for referrals. You've got to do it yourself. And then you got those people, and they're making some sales, and now they want more. The main connection between those 3 types of people is that most everybody is scared of selling. Imposter syndrome is a very real thing. We all experience it, I believe. People don't want to be pushy or salesy, and I'm here to tell you, I don't want you to be pushy or salesy. It doesn't work. People will do everything they can to avoid selling. We're going to talk about some of those things. I'm sure you have all done that. Oh, let me work on the website again. Or, oh, no. I got to do another MVP. You can only have one MVP. That's the point. People start getting the sales, but it's not scalable. This happens a lot in the education space. Because you get 1 school or 2 schools, 3, 4, but you can't get to 40. You can't get to 400. You can't get enough sales to unhook from the day job that you have. The commonality between all these folks in those 3 buckets is that they don't have a lead gen system. You have to have a system. Eventually, systems have to take over your business. Let me tell you what a lead gen system is not, so we can set the stage. Random posts on social media that no one sees. How many people have done those? I see some hands. Writing blogs. Even if it's 4,000 words, 6,000 words, 8,000 words, nobody's reading it. You can use AI, it's fine. But if nobody's reading your blog, then that is a slow burn method. It will burn you out. Go into networking events. This is an amazing conference. I got nothing against conferences anymore. But I really didn't like conferences for a while. And that was a Josh problem. I don't know about you guys. Try this out. When you get out of this room, find somebody you haven't talked to and say, what do you do? See if they can actually tell you what they do. Nobody really knows what they do clearly. They can tell you succinctly who they help, what method they use, and what results they can get you. And that was me. So I was going to all these conferences and people were like, what do you do? I'm like, well, you know, and I'd spend all this money to fly or go to the conference, get a big stack of business cards, which are not contracts, which honestly I believe that people give you that business card so they can walk away. And then I'd get home and nothing would happen. So I kind of had this hateful relationship with conferences. I'm going to show you how we can flip that. And then again, referrals only take you so far. They're helpful to get started. They're helpful to have coming in from reliable sources, but you can't build a business in the life that you want on referrals. So if you want to get leads in your business and fast, and that's what I think you're here for, we're going to talk about hunting methods right now. This is not a hunting method. This is the old way. And if you do it like this, you're going to end up like this guy. And really, nobody wants to be this guy except for this guy. Okay? This guy thinks that he can cold call, he can cold DM, and that you're going to say, yes, I've been waiting for you. But you're not. You're not. That means that this person's going to have to convince you to buy. So that's not the hunting method. And this is when you probably think, I'll work on the website. Yeah. Let me just do another MVP. Let's build another landing page. That's avoiding the fact that you really have to learn how to sell to people. And these hunting methods work. I don't want you to be salesy. I don't want you to be pushy. I want you to use this method. If any of you guys want this deck, happy to share it with you. Definitely. If you take pictures, that's fine too. If you want. Let's talk through this. The 3E method starts with laser targeting. Laser targeting will feel uncomfortable. Because laser targeting means that you're not selling to everybody. Your wallet's going to start saying, why are we selling to everybody? Laser targeting means you're going to talk to one person you can help. Target the right person. When you start to target the right person, you start to get that messaging down. You will attract more and more of those right people. And that's what you want in your business. So magnetic messaging comes from listening to that right person. That you get away from saying, here's how I can help you. You start saying, how can I help you? Because you've got the solution, you've got the product, you've got the idea, you know what you're doing. But you just need to hear from the right person how you can help them. And when you hear their words, this is going to sound a little salesy. It's kind of like saying, what if I could tell you? What if I could tell you I can solve that problem for you? And that totally changes the conversation. The messaging becomes magnetic. And then what do we do with the message is we put it into our credibility. So I'm a big believer in using LinkedIn. You can use it to get a job. I believe you should use LinkedIn to attract your network, to speak to your network. Whenever you write your next post, I want you to think of it from the standpoint of coaching. The prompt that I use every time I write a post is that I want you to write this like Josh Chernikoff, the coach. I used to say Matt McConaughey. Josh Chernikoff, the coach. I want you to write 3 bullet points, and I want you to do it from the standpoint of coaching. 250 words, no more. Your credibility is going to increase. You're going to start helping people. They're going to understand that you can solve the problem that they have. And that is you pulling that credibility lever. And as you're putting more information out there on LinkedIn, on a podcast, speaking, Instagram, whatever you want to use all. People are going to say, that's me. And when people say, that's me, that's the beginning of you getting your messaging right. That's the beginning of you talking to the right person. That's the beginning of you getting your own leads on repeat, not having to rely on referrals. That's the signal you're looking for. And then when you meet with people, I don't want you to think of it as a discovery call. I had somebody one time say to me, I think you meant discovery call here. We don't think of it inside my team, who's right here. We don't think of what our first call is as a discovery call. We think of it as a confirmation call. Because you guys will see, hopefully if you get a chance to connect with me on LinkedIn or other different places, that there's a lot of information out there on how I can help people generate leads on repeat in a comfortable way. So people are actually just confirming that I am who I say I am. And maybe it's semantics, but for me it helps me feel a little more comfortable knowing that people are coming because they're really interested in potentially learning from me or with me. There's not much for them to discover. And the result is these really wonderful conversations. They're natural. They're enjoyable. You're not selling, you're listening, you're learning, and seeing if this is a right fit. And most likely because they came to you, you're probably 3/4 of the way there. Your business grows and they're going to get their problem solved. That's where you want to be. So when you use the 3E method, you don't feel like an imposter because you know you can help them. You can be genuine. You don't have to avoid doing sales because people are coming to you because they want to work with you. So you really have nothing to sell at that point. And you can begin to get into a scalable place. Because if you find that conferences are your way to go, or LinkedIn, or podcasts, or sponsoring events, you can do more of that. And you'll see more of those people coming. So I want you to ask yourselves these questions. Can I get leads this week? Today. If you start doing some of these things, can you start to get leads today? What's holding you back? For a lot of people in my course, we get into the 3rd week and I start to lose people. Because it's when I start to encourage them to reach out and talk to people. And while they want leads, they're not willing to take the step of reaching out, of listening, of learning. Because guess what? A, they might think of it as cold. I don't think it was cold, I think it was targeted. And B, guess what's on the other end of that line? Rejections and objections. And I would love for you guys to begin to embrace the rejections and the objections. Because the sooner that you can embrace those things, the sooner that you can grow your business. You've got to hear from people what's wrong. Because you're going to have to get through those objections and rejections. And you want people to say, yes, that's me, and you want to start building relationships through your offer. This is Chris and Corey from Virginia. They've been selling in the education space for about 2 decades, so they were certainly not scared. But we started using their credibility to bring leads to them. And when they started leveraging their own credibility using LinkedIn, the leads started coming. So I want you guys to think about LinkedIn in 2 different ways. First, LinkedIn has to be thought of like the gym. If you go to the gym once a month, you will get once a month results. So I encourage you to think of going to the LinkedIn gym 3 to 5 times a week. That doesn't mean that you have to write the greatest post on earth 5 times a week. And sometimes we get in the gym and we don't feel like being there, but you just make it do it. So on those days that you don't feel like being in the LinkedIn gym, just comment. Just comment on people's posts. It'll lift them up. It'll get you into the conversation. The other thing is think of LinkedIn like a conference. Because these conversations are happening whether you are there or not. And you should be there. You should be leading the conversations. And you should be joining the conversations. And here's an interesting tip. Follow all of your competitors on LinkedIn and be willing to post on anything that they write about. Because your clients are hanging out with your competitors right now. I'm not saying go in there and say anything rude or mean. That's not my place. Lift them up and say, that's a good point. And have you thought about it this way? Because somebody might see that and say, that is a good point. And then they might go into your LinkedIn profile. So follow your competitors and lift them up. No clear promise and lots of waffle. I was referring to this earlier. When you get out, ask somebody who you don't know what they do. Most people do not know what they do. And this is hard for founders because it's being precise. Because when you are precise, that means you're leaving out a lot of people that you could work with. When you can, Google yourself and see what comes up first. Most likely, if you have a website, that will come up first. Second will be LinkedIn for most. So I want to orient everybody real quickly to some of the aspects of my LinkedIn profile. This is a banner, picture, and a headline. We're going to talk a lot about a headline. This is my profile. When you go to my profile, you'll see that it reads like a sales funnel. It doesn't read like a resume. A sales funnel is going to help you because when you reach out to people who do not know you, you target them. You want them to come and you want them to say, this person can help me. And a lot of that stems from your headline. So, if you guys can, you got to think about your headline in this way. Your headline should be not, I see this a lot, I'm a dad and I'm a dreamer and I'm an entrepreneur. That doesn't help anybody who wants to buy from you. But if your headline says, I help who, using what method, get which results, and in how long, when I come see you on LinkedIn, I'm going to know you can help me solve my problem. I help who, using what method, get which results. Probably right now, might have that generic looking title. Again, I help who, using what method, get which results. And when you have a generic title, people don't know how you can help them. I'm gonna highlight a few different tutoring companies because I know tutoring companies well. You've got the generic title. You've got the unclear waffle. Enthusiastic reading tutor, helping struggling readers and zoo kids reading. Don't know what that means. She had a nice website though. There's 4 buckets, actually. And now let's begin to talk about what good headlines look like. Here's Neil Seltzer. I help elite tutoring companies raise student scores by giving them white label tests they can trust in student analytics to turn their tutors into diagnosticians. Good headline, clear, benefit led. So if you're a tutoring company that needs help with SAT and ACT prep, Neil's the man. And you know it. When Neil reaches out to you and you say, who the heck is this guy? But you look at his LinkedIn profile, you realize Neil can help you. So while you don't know Neil and you might not meet him for coffee, you'll probably take a 15 to 20 minute Zoom call with him to learn more to see if he can actually help you. This is Neil's profile. So you can see at the top, we ask questions of our ideal client. What happens if your practice tests aren't hard enough? What happens if your scores on your practice tests don't translate to the real thing? Ask questions, demonstrate results, a little bit about what you do, and a call to action. So, I'm going to give everybody permission, and we're recording this. You guys have my permission to go to my LinkedIn profile, copy it, go to your favorite AI tool, and say, I heard this guy speak. Seems to know what he's talking about. Can you take my old profile and make it look like his profile? You have my permission. It's not the greatest profile on LinkedIn, but it works. Clear and benefit led. This is what happened for Neil. He had to get comfortable with this stuff. So I recognize that you're not all going to walk out of this room and be ready to generate leads the way that I am. Neil was the same way. He got very comfortable. Think about your headline first. It's 220 characters, by the way. I help who, using what method, get which results. We want specific outcomes, and we want it to be focused. Again, people come, and you know exactly how you can help them. Does your headline measure up? How many people have kind of the generic title headline right now? How many people don't have a headline at all? Okay, so everybody's got a headline. So we got something to start with. I also want you guys to think about the fact that your story, your founder's story, who you are, is your strategy. I still believe that people buy from people. Okay? If you guys saw my post this morning, or if you saw this one back on July the 9th, my father died on June the 9th, this past June. And I've been telling this story to people. Some people might not think that this is the place for it on LinkedIn. But losing my father and going through grief was a very tough thing, still is, because I'm an entrepreneur. I can handle anything. Shit comes at me every single day. And we fix it. I can't seem to fix the grief. It's getting better, But I started talking to people about this on LinkedIn, and actually I started feeling better. People started talking to me about their grief and their experience. So obviously there's a fine line between how much you should share about your personal life. But if you can relate to people, if you can help them, then share. And a lot of it comes from pictures. It's a picture of my dad back in the 60s at the Grand Canyon. So if you have good pictures, if you can find good pictures, that's gonna get people to stop scrolling. Because otherwise what they're looking at are stock photos or no photos. So if you have a good picture, use it, it's okay. It matters because then you end up on this stage. This is where I was last year at DC Startup Week. Long story short, they said, come speak at DC Startup Week. And I thought, I'll be in a room the size of a closet. And they said, this is where you're gonna speak. But I took the stage and it worked out just fine. We're here at year 2. But it's because they knew me, because I'd been telling my story, because I was credible. Because I wasn't gonna get up here and just tell you guys, here's how you get leads. But really, here's what you have to do, and you have to be yourself. It's about being genuine. And Nissa, she's a client of ours. Super cool. She runs a company that helps parents who want to teach their kids French and do culture as well. She's from France. She lives up in New York City. And she's so super cool. And she was doing these boring posts on LinkedIn. Nobody cared. But then she started taking these pictures in Times Square, walking around. And then she started showing some of the pictures of growing up in Paris. And people started understanding that she's credible. She can help me help my kids. But the story that she was telling was not about helping the kids. The story that she was telling was about a parent to a parent. Again, it's back to that idea of whose life can you change the most. Kids really don't care if they were to get it from Lingo Circle or another tutoring company or another tutoring company. What they care about is that they're learning French. But the parents care about who they're buying from. And that's where Anissa began to shine. She worked her tail off on LinkedIn. Posted. And the leads started coming to her. So we're going to talk about, quick summary, Power of One would make perfect sense. The hunting methods, selling, whose life are you transforming? If you think of it that way, you're not going to be selling to them. And the headline. I help them using what method get which results. We're going to talk about Catherine soon. If you guys want to work on your headline, find me on LinkedIn. She and I worked through her headline for several weeks. It's harder than you might think. So I'm happy to help you. If you want to grab this QR code here, we're going to help you get the blueprint, the lead generation blueprint. I'll bring this thing back up later, but grab it now if you'd like. And I'm going to talk through the lead generation blueprint. So we've got to talk about the signature solution. The signature solution is your offer. If you guys follow Alex Hormozi, he says that your offer has to be so crystal clear that people almost feel dumb, his words, not learning from you, hearing more about it. That's how clear your offer has to be. I help companies go from 0 leads to a steady flow of leads. You're not looking for leads, I ain't your guy. So a signature solution, your offer can be through a signature solution, which is the clearest visual roadmap. It speaks to your niche. It's unique. It's you guys. It's your method. Nobody else in the world has it. The 3D method didn't exist before I created it. I had been doing it for 20 years. But when you put a name on something, when you give it a life, people start leaning in and say, tell me more about that. I will. That's your offer. Paul King. He'd been working with schools up in New York City, just kind of helping them get through this Regents exam. But then he said, I'm going to create the Passport program. I'm going to help your school go through the Passport program to pass the Regents exam. Follow it this way. Bottom left, up. That's the Passport program. Didn't exist before Paul made it. Young Ninjas out of California. This guy does non-contact martial arts. What does that mean? Let me tell you more about it. Let me show you what his offer is. The Peacemaker Pathway. These guys help mediation in mostly urban schools. He takes you from overwhelmed and frustrated with student conflicts to proud of impact on students and school culture. It's a pretty clear offer. And there's this guy. From zero leads to a steady flow of leads. And you guys can see how I've started to walk you through it. Perfect client, credibility, ask questions, your offer, start to target, that messaging, get it right. I'm gonna leave this part off for now. That's what you, if you just grab that QR code, that's what you just download. Catherine. You guys know Catherine? She's the doll. Well, last year she was the doll of this conference. Catherine runs a phenomenal company called Go Pursue in DC. She came in to my program anti-LinkedIn. Anti. But she joined. And she worked her tail off on LinkedIn. She treated it like a conference, she treated it like a gym. And her company just got funded. And she's got leads coming to her. Her messaging is clear, her offer is clear, she's talking to the right people, and her business is growing. And believe me, Catherine is the last person to be salesy or pushing. So if you guys are following what I'm saying, all of the growth in your business is possible by just who you are, by the stories that you tell, by talking to the right person, by listening to them and letting them know that you can help them. Bring on the questions. I know we got it.
So we talked a lot about growth with clients, but when you achieve that growth and get those leads, how do you pair that with growth of your team and the company you have to manage that perception?
Talk more. Ask.
I guess, you are sourcing clients, you got the formula down for how to generate more leads.
Yes.
Okay, great, that's on automation, that's automated. Now, how do you scale up your team to match the influx of volume?
Yes.
All right. I think we are back live here. Okay, I think we're live here. Back to Breaking the Grade. Again, I am your guest host today, Rose Hustreiter. You can find me on LinkedIn or rosehustreiter.com. I just wanted to take a couple minutes here and let's just close off our podcast today. When it comes to takeaways for this, I want you to ask yourself, what stood out? What stood out? So those of you who were joining me earlier on before Josh took the stage, we did a little bit of pre-work. We were thinking about, why, what are we, how are we trying to improve that part of our business? So what stood out for you? I have taken a whole bunch of notes, and it's just amazing. Every time I hear Josh speak, it just like deepens my understanding of what he's been trying to get through my head for years. So I just want to say thank you, Josh, so much. That was Josh Chernikoff live from DC Startup and Tech Week, and that talk was packed. So let's do a little bit of a recap too, as you are thinking about what stood out for you. First off, do you really have a sales problem, or is it a clarity problem? Right? Is your message clear? And are you trying to sell products or experiences? Right? People don't buy products. They're buying the people who understand them. They're buying that connection, authenticity. So one thing actually I always stood out when I started working with Josh a few years ago was the principle of authenticity in the system is very important, especially in today's market. It's all about trust, right? So just ask yourself, do you understand them? Do you understand your audience? Do you understand their pain points? And are you actually solving for the right problem? Okay. And I think a third takeaway was you kind of want to think about going from confusing to clear by evaluating it. You want to go from hidden to trusted by elevating. You want to go from manual to repeatable, right? The whole leads on repeat. but I'm adding in my notes here the right leads on repeat because we only have so many hours in a day. So only so much energy in the day. So are you spending your energy where it counts? Are you laser targeting? How are you magnetizing, or are you chasing? Because to me, chasing is just wasted energy, right? How are you turning that power dynamic around for you and magnetizing the right conversations? How are you leveraging your story? Because your story is credible. Like, you have a lot of credibility. Are you leveraging any of that? Um, and how are you confirming? Okay. How are you connecting with those that completely resonate with your story? And in my world, in my field of helping people unlock that courage so they can actually take effective action, what I hear, and I think I've heard even in my cohort at 3E, which was like, we just don't have time, we don't have the energy. What narratives are you telling yourself that are holding you back? So I want you to really reflect on that too. Now, if you are here live still with me, I know we have to end in just a couple of minutes, but if you're still here with me, let me know in the comments if you had any standouts on this talk. Don't forget to follow Josh on LinkedIn. Go to joshchernikoff.com or go to LinkedIn. You can also get that free 3E framework PDF. I'm actually going to download a new version of that. I think it's gone through some really good upgrades. So way to go, Josh. I loved it. You can direct message Josh if you want a copy of today's deck. And don't forget to join us next Thursday for our regular Breaking the Grade Live, where I will give this host seat back to you, Josh. A great job. It was wonderful hearing you speak today. I do have a minute, so I just want to throw a couple other ideas out there because, again, I felt like I really heard this whole getting out of the fear state, right? We avoid discomfort. And that's actually part of my wheelhouse, is helping people get out of that discomfort of taking action. Josh, I really loved how you said, treat it like a gym, treat LinkedIn like a gym. I can work with that. That is good. And from my field, crossing that procrastination to action line, I think my challenge to the group here today is think about something you can do in 3 minutes. Put a countdown clock on, something you've been avoiding. Okay, so if you've been avoiding LinkedIn, put that countdown clock on just for 3 minutes and do something in 3 minutes. That'll get you across that procrastination line pretty quick. It reduces actual pain in your body and you'll get action. Now, if the only thing you can do in that 3 minutes is go to Josh Chernikoff's site and get that 3E framework PDF, that's gold. So use that time wisely. And again, you can find me LinkedIn, Rose Hustreiter, or rosehustreiter.com. And if you enjoyed any part of today's talk or any of the ideas that I gave you, just letting you know, I do help project teams and entrepreneurs unlock that durable skill set that we all need to thrive in the future of work. So I wish you all a fabulous day. And thank you, Josh's team. Alvin and Ken, thank you so much for your support today. And Josh, thanks for inviting me up on the guest host seat today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you all on LinkedIn and at the next live event. Thanks for being part of this live stream. Remember, we're all building something different here. One founder, one district, one breakthrough at a time. I'm Rose, and this has been Breaking the Grade Live. See you next time.